So on today's episode, I want to talk about this camera, the A7II. Yeah, the A7II. So this camera was released in like 2014. That's like 8 years ago. And I had this camera for a year, so I want to give you guys my honest review. So let's head to the studio. So the Sony A7II. Hold on, let me take the sweater off. That's more like it. So I am using a wide angle lens. I'm using a 10 to 18 millimeter lens. If you guys like this apparatus right here, let me know down in the comments, because I usually use a 20, usually I use a 28 to 70, but I'm gonna try the wide angle lens today. So if you guys are new here, my name is Ricky. I do vlogs, lifestyle, things that have to do with cameras, and all that good stuff. So consider subscribing if you guys are into that kind of stuff. So if this is the last video you guys watch before you buy your Sony A7II, I want to give you my full 100% unbiased opinion. So the photo side of the camera. Now there's two sides of this camera. There's obviously a photo side and a video side. So I'm going to be talking about the photo side for all you photographers. So I'm not an aggressive photographer. I like to shoot photos once in a while, probably like 3 times a month, nothing too crazy. But for what you get, it takes some really nice photos. It shoots at 24 megapixels, which is really good. And this camera is full frame. Like for instance, I was in Boston and I took this photo, and I'll put it on the screen for you guys, and it worked really well in low light. And what I love about this camera is the IBIS. And if you guys don't know what IBIS is, it's in-body image stabilization. So when you guys are getting those photos at night and you have long exposure, if you hit that button, it's not gonna really do anything to your camera because it's stabilized. You don't wanna bump it. You could use like a little shutter button, but I don't have one personally. The in-body stabilization helps that. When you press the shutter button, it kind of eliminates that jitter. And the same thing in video as well. And now that's pretty much it for the photo side. I want to talk about the video side because I am a heavy vlogger and I use this camera primarily for vlogging. But there are some things that I do not like about it. Being that there's no flip out screen. On this camera right here, I cannot see if I'm in focus or not, but the only thing that's saving me is this wide angle lens, because a wide angle lens captures what's in front of it, and right now I'm in front of it, so I'm probably in focus. Sometimes I do catch it in post-production, kind of like drifting, but it's not really bad. The autofocus is really good on this camera. Now for a camera being this old, I can see why there's no flip out screen. It is 8 years old, so probably the technology back then wasn't as insane, but now with all Sony's Alpha series, they all have flip out screens, so they started listening to us vloggers. So this camera does shoot in 1080p, and that's the highest it can go. And that's kind of like, it all depends on how you look at it. If you are a cinematographer and you want to shoot at 4K or even 8K, because there are 8K cameras now, that will kind of probably throw you off. But for me as a vlogger, just getting a run and gun type style, I like 1080p. And for my style as well, I kind of like making you guys feel like you're hanging out with me more than like a huge cinematic video. But for you guys who like that cinematography look, then this camera could not be for you. It's just all how you look at it. But in my opinion, 1080p is still up there. Now all the frame selections that you can choose from is 60, 30, and 24. Now typically I use 30 frames a second for these vlogs, but you can shoot at 60 frames a second for those slow motion shots. And if you guys don't know what FPS is, or frames per second, it's how many frames are in 1 second of your video clip. When you want to get slow motion shots, you want to shoot on a higher frames per second. If you shoot on a too low of your frames per second, which would be like 24 or 30, the moment you slow those clips down, it's going to be very, very choppy. So you want to shoot at a higher frames per second because there's more frames in your clip. Now another feature that this camera has, it has APS-C, and what APS-C is a smaller frame. So when you're using like wide angle lenses and other lenses out there for your E-mount cameras, this one particular I'm using is a 10 to 18 millimeter, but since I'm using APS-C, it kind of crops it in, so that way it kind of looks like more like a 16 to like 28 millimeter lens, because this lens specifically is very, very wide. And by putting it on APS-C, there's not a lot of vignetting. So my final thoughts. For you photographers out there, you got that nice 24 megapixels. You got that full frame. It's very good in low light. Now for you video people out there, the vloggers, it kind of stings with no flip out screen, but this camera really makes up for it for the fast autofocus. And now if you're a beginner, and if you guys don't know how to get to your settings really fast, and you're trying to vlog, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you are more of like on the expert side and you know how to get to your settings really fast, then I could see where you could purchase this camera. And now for $1,600, I think it's a pretty good buy. Now I'm sure there's probably more cameras out there that can probably outperform it, but you got the IBIS, which is really good in this camera, the 24 megapixels, which is really great for taking photography in the full frame. All those three is something I could consider buying. And it still takes E-mount lenses, so that's a plus. So even if you decide to, buy a lens for this camera and you think, oh, I don't like this camera anymore, I don't want this camera anymore, you can still use your same lenses for the newer cameras out there that take E-mount cameras, which is a really, really nice thing. So if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know down in the comments down below. And if you guys want to learn my vlogging setup, hit this video right here to learn my vlogging setup. If you guys got any value out of this, let me know. And if you guys have any comments or concerns, feel free to ask me down in the comments section down below. But anyways, this is Ricky, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.